A little bit about the history of SRM. When did it start? Who started it?
Sure. The SRM training system was started almost 30 years ago. It was designed by a German engineer, Uli Schober in Germany. It's a power measurement device used in road cycling, track, mountain biking, and triathlon now. About 75% now of the pro peloton is riding on the SRM. We work closely with 16 of the 22 teams, but we also have individual riders on several other teams who choose to use the SRM training system.
And do riders actually, pay for their own SRMs? If the team's not sponsored by them, guys are buying this stuff. Is that right?
Sure. We have many of the athletes find the value in SRM and will go ahead and make the purchase on their own if that's what they choose to use to improve their training and racing.
The crank fits on there and the chainring's attached here, right? So this is the inside of it now. How exactly do we get power from this?
So the 4 bridges here have string gauges applied to them, and as the rider produces power and torque on the pedals, the string gauges flex, and then power is calculated using a fairly simple equation, which is how hard the rider is pedaling multiplied by how fast.
So SRMs, or power meters in racing, is a bit of a hot topic for 2 reasons. I want to tackle the first one, which is that people have argued in the past that particularly Team Sky, they use their SRM so much as part of their tactics that they can kind of crush the racing side of things.
Part of the tactics is, yes, maybe using a power meter. A lot of times you can't depend just on the numbers. And so, yeah, like you see Froome looking at the power meter because he knows his limits. And if you go above those limits for an extended period of time, you can lose a race. I mean, you can lose precious time by blowing up. So he knows that if he stays at this limit, he can ride for this amount of time. And that's the way that the team approaches. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. And it's a style of riding too, because he's the type of rider that needs to be more sustained and more controlled. He doesn't have the explosiveness that other teams have. Like, I think it was a big issue at the Giro with Nibali, but it's a completely different riding style. Italians tend to accelerate more, have a big explosion, or they just really attack and aggressive, similar style to Contador. And with Sky, they're not going to be able to compete at that with those types of tactics. So they have to control the race in order to control the intensity levels and keep these guys from having these explosive attacks. Now there's another side, claiming that you can use the power data, and look and see whether someone's doping or not. And I think it's difficult to take a stage of any race and say that a rider's doing one thing or another based on their power output. I think that they would need information that's collected over the course of a season or a course of years. And so I think, if they want to start utilizing that information, then it should be implemented, but it needs to be tracked on a daily basis, more or less, or like looking at it, seasonal. Remember that the block of training, whether it's a course of a year, and then you can really see what a rider's doing or get a better idea. But same thing, it's you need to leave that to the scientists, because I think there's so many amateur theory, writers that are just making up numbers and making their own assessment that aren't qualified to make those judgments.
We have a general plan, but always plans have got to be adaptable. So from the start, we're obviously giving them information on, depending on the stage, climbs, how long they are, what percentage they are. On the flatter